Hello, folks, and welcome back to another edition of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Monday, October 25th, and we had a pretty interesting weekend here. And it feels like we're picking up right where we left off on Friday with some positive price action here to start the day, which gets me, cautiously optimistic about the week. But there's plenty to talk about in terms of news pieces, in terms of technicals. We had a really interesting weekend for Shiba Inu, everyone's favorite meme coin, really was rallying this weekend. But we'll talk about that and a lot more before we dive into things. CJ, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well, Monty. Thanks for that. Good morning to all the rebels in the chat. See you guys. But yeah, really interesting weekend. On Friday, we were a little bit more bearish because we had seen distribution from some of the longer term holders. Now we're actually seeing that kind of washed out of the market. We're not seeing that distribution like what we saw. We've kind of had a reset in funding as well. We'll go over that and a lot of other on-chain metrics. But I'm also pretty fascinated with the technicals and where we're at right now as well, because we also are bouncing off some common levels that we found previously in the trend. So I'm really excited to get into that and more, but we have some really interesting news around Mastercard this morning. Do you want to start off with that, Monty?
Yeah, I think that is a good place to start, CJ. So let's dive right into that news piece real quick. And here it is. The headline: Mastercard says any bank or merchant on its vast network can soon offer crypto services. So obviously this is, massive news whenever you have a traditional financial institution adopting crypto, especially to this extent where they're talking about, any bank or merchant in its network having the ability to offer crypto services. I mean, this is obviously huge, huge news. And as a result, price has shown some nice, positive price action here. But yeah, I mean, this is big news, CJ. Basically, the key points here: Mastercard is preparing to announce that any of the thousands of banks and millions of merchants on its payment network can soon integrate crypto into their products. That includes Bitcoin wallets, credit and debit cards, and even earning rewards and enabling digital assets to be spent, loyalty programs for airlines or hotel points. All these things that we've seen kind of popping up with some more niche, crypto services now being adopted by these big mainstream institutions. Very, very positive news. And lastly, to do so, the bank, the payment network is partnering with Bakkt. The crypto firm recently spun off by the Intercontinental Exchange, which will be behind the scenes provider of custodial services for those who sign up. So big news here for both Bakkt and Mastercard and crypto in general. I mean, I can't really remember the last time we had this sort of news piece that potentially opens up this many new customers to crypto related services. Really is a great signification of how far crypto has come, where we're at in terms of mainstream adoption. And as you can tell, CJ, price is responding well. So exciting stuff here to start the day.
Prices in general have just been tremendous, especially when it comes to the equity market, traditional finance, all-time highs virtually across the board. And so, risk on mentality certainly is back. But with that being said, let's jump into some of the technicals and on-chain metrics. So let's see where we want to start. I think I'm going to start with the on-chain metrics because there's a lot in the technicals to discuss in terms of support levels and what we've seen recently as well. But each time we get, really large spikes in the realized profit, that leads to typically some declines on the other side, or at least shortly afterwards. And then once we come down and hit the midline and kind of have these reset periods in which all individuals, all market participants, doesn't have to be long-term holders or short-term holders, they have a chance to kind of take profit. The market kind of resets. Once it goes back to this zero line, in which the funding is somewhat neutral, or the realized profit and loss is neutral, then that's been kind of an optimal time to buy dips. Like this was one example that we saw earlier in March. Once we had that reset level, we really shot back up to new all-time highs. So now that we've actually come down from last week and what we've seen, we've had market participants now have the opportunity to take some profit and to get out of the market. And we've seen that reset to the zero level, which I think is quite promising for the bullish case. Also, let's take a look at long-term holder net unrealized profit and loss. This is something that I like over the course of Bitcoin market cycles that gives you a macro perspective of kind of the fear and greed or the psychology of a market cycle. I'm sure you guys have seen that Wall Street cheat sheet that is very ubiquitous among not only stock market traders, but also crypto traders. And this is kind of Glassnode's attempt at recreating that. And as you can see, we're not yet into the euphoric levels, even after creating a recent new all-time high. We're still in that belief to denial phase in terms of unrealized profit and loss. So I think those are some pretty interesting on-chain metrics, and they give a perspective of kind of where the trend is. Now let's talk about support levels and how to potentially respond or interpret this bullish engulfing candle that we're getting from Bitcoin today.
Yeah, CJ, like you said, it was really interesting this weekend to kind of note the critical levels we came down to retest. Lots of people I saw in our community were trying to, perhaps catch the downside here with some limit orders. But yeah, we bounced from some very critical levels. So excited to hear what you got to say here.
Yeah, and there was a discussion about buying the dip, getting kind of a limit order filled slightly below 60,000, and you know, like what we said, we were a little bit more bearish, going into Friday, but now it actually seems like we're starting to see a reversal. And unless we have a lot of folks come in and really buy the dip with leverage and then get flushed, I don't think we're going to see lower levels like that 55K downside risk we had talked about. But what I have here highlighted in terms of the technicals today are the Williams Alligator moving averages here, as you can see. And the last time we started our significant run up and then had a profit taking period, it looks very similar to this. Early August when we finally bottomed, had a really nice short squeeze to 42K, and then back tested that top moving average of the Williams Alligator. And once we got a bullish engulfing candle from that level, we continued with bullish price action. And this is shaping up to be quite a bullish engulfing candle off of that very same support level, what we saw in earlier August. So that bodes very well for the bullish case. I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard me say it plenty of times. I love to buy bullish engulfing candles at the bottom of downtrends. So not only do you have a confluence of support with the Williams Alligator, but you also have some with the Fibonacci levels as well, which I'll show in a moment. Last thing I want to showcase on the Rebel charts is the CCI, because this zero line on the CCI has been a pretty common place for dip buying to be optimal and for the trend to bounce from that level when it's already in a bullish posture. So if we kind of zoom out and see the times previously in which we've bounced from this level, it was throughout this uptrend. We hit the zero line here, which was an optimal dip buying opportunity. We hit it here once again, which would have been, a nice dip buying opportunity, which ultimately led to bullish continuation. And we're starting to see the same thing here as well. So the similarities between this time period in the trend of early August and what we're seeing now in the technicals, I think are very interesting how similar they are. Last thing I'll mention has to do with the TD sequential nines. We've actually had a nice reset period here where a lot of times when we reach a TD sequential nine, we'll actually correct for 3 to 4 candles of the opposite color afterwards before continuing the existing trend. And if you'll notice, there lines up to be so many similarities between this move and what we saw in late July, early August, and what we're seeing now. You had that same TD sequential 9 get reached, and then a 1 to 4 candle correction of the opposite color before bullish continuation. That's pretty much what we're seeing right here, right now as well. Last thing, then I'll pass it back to Monty. Fibonacci levels. The most common Fibonacci level we've been looking at has to do from, the top of the uptrend, all-time high, to, that capitulation period low. And we saw a back test of that 37K level, very similar to what I'm about to show you. But as you can see, we got a rejection, found support, continue with bullish continuation. We can actually apply the Fibonacci level on a more shorter term time frame now that we've had a run up and kind of subsequent decline. If we start at the peak of the trend of September and then we drag down to our recent low of the end of September, it looks like a very similar story in which, we go up, get rejected at kind of that previous all-time high level, but have now found support at another similar Fibonacci level. So just a lot of confluence between what we saw earlier on in terms of the technicals and what we continue to see now. So
Great stuff there, CJ. And, speaking of confluence, I just want to continue along that train of thought that you were going with there and get to ETH real quick and talk about what we're seeing with ETH. Look at some of those Fibonacci levels because it is staggeringly similar to what you just mentioned with Bitcoin there. Obviously, if we take a look at the Fibonacci's from a longer time frame here, CJ, we're hitting resistance at ETH perfectly at this Fibonacci level marked by the previous all-time high. And for me, I think the way I would want to play this is wait for a break above this level. Bitcoin's showing strength today. ETH is kind of underperforming relative to Bitcoin, not too surprising given what we've seen in terms of news-related events. But this, to me, is a clear breakout level for ETH. This level of about $4,200, marked by this Fibonacci level and also the previous all-time high in terms of a candle body close. Looking like a clear breakout level. Also, if you take in consideration this formation we're seeing here, like CJ said, we had this kind of 1 to 4 candle correction. That was enough time for this profit taking to occur here. And it looks like we're ready to continue along this positive momentum. The trend is still very strong here. No sign of really stopping even after a weekend of somewhat uncertainty here. But as you can see, the ETH trend still looking very strong. And I expect that to continue as long as we're seeing strength in Bitcoin as well. So, like CJ said, we're seeing lots of confluence in this market. And I think the ETH chart is just another instance of that confluence.
let's hit some altcoins. First, any Doge of the day?
No Doge of the day. No true Doge of the day, but I did want to mention, Shiba Inu. I feel like we have to mention it just briefly. This thing, we talked about it before. We've talked about it many times. But this weekend, that thing just really started to rip. And I thought it was pretty hilarious. I don't know if I don't have the tweet pulled up. I don't know if you can find it real quick, but this guy, this Dogecoin, his name's like Doge Sheep, or it's like Sheep Holder something on Twitter. He tweeted to Elon Musk and he says, "How much sheep do you hold?" And Elon actually responded to the tweet and he said none. And immediately the price of sheep just started to tank. And everyone's like starting to hate on this guy on Twitter, like, way to go, you like crashed the market, like just leave it alone. But that's what's driving this market. Obviously, it's not necessarily the hardcore technicals or the fundamentals that we talk about with other assets. When you have something like SHIB, it can be as simple as a tweet from Elon, and that really can drive price. So interesting stuff there. Just thought that was worth the mention. But what altcoins are you taking a look at as we start this week here, CJ?
I see a request for Solana, so I do want to hit that one. And then I'll pass to you because I do want to take a couple look at various assets before we go into the Doge of the day. Like Elron actually is close to making a new all-time high. Decent surge in volume last week. Might get a little bit of rejection at the double top, but I still like the momentum that it's carried over the past week. Let's get into Solana and discuss. So Solana is another one that has come very close to a double top, or actually has created like a perfect double top here at the 215 resistance level. In terms of oscillators, you're finally having the opportunity for the CCI to come down and reset. Also, in terms of the MACD, not a lot of weakness or bearish momentum whatsoever. I think the thing that is probably most notable that what we saw last week while up testing this all-time high was a nice surge in volume above the 30-day average. We had 2 days of really nice bullish volume, and I think that's kind of leading to the continuation of what we're seeing today. And very interestingly, this is Solana demonstrating a lot of strength and resilience while Bitcoin is still trying to figure out where it was going to go. At least it was this weekend. And Solana went down to about 180 or let's see what the exact number was. It went down to 188. And instantly, I mean, it was really quickly bought up below that $200 level, and I think buyers were very content to jump in at that level. I still think Solana is extraordinarily strong. Um, Also, I think it's worth noting that I think it was 78% of their total market cap value is staked right now to earn that yield. And so when you lock those coins up, obviously that creates a very favorable and bullish supply and demand dynamic. We posted an image of that in the chat over the weekend, but I really appreciated that data from the person who sent it to me. But Monty, what do you got, my friend?
Yeah, so like I said, no, I don't necessarily have a true doge of the day in the sense that, I'm not gonna enter any trades based on what I'm seeing right now, but I am seeing some interesting technical formations emerging here that I think are worth a look. I'm gonna start with this one. BV mentions it here. HBAR looking resilient. And yeah, I would agree. I highlighted this last week as one of my trade insights, but I think it's worth another look again this week. So let me just quickly pull up that chart here. Because last week when I was talking about H bar, I was talking about this sort of wedge formation that we had emerging, and now I want to take a look at this again because I think it's still valid, even though we had this sort of kind of fake breakout here last week. We really just kind of came up and retested this upper bound. I could argue that this channel is still intact given the wicks from these previous swing highs here. So this wedge, I think, is still intact. This clear trend upwards here, I think, looks very nicely in terms of the way we've kind of retested lower levels, but the amount with which we've kind of retested down has kind of lightened up each time we have had a little bit of a sell-off here. And this kind of compression looks like it's kind of forming a point right around here, perhaps in, just a few weeks or few days here even. So I'm going to watch for a clean breakout above this level. Last week I kind of, had the wedge a little bit over here. We got the breakout, but kind of pulled back on this weekend with a lot of other assets. Now I'll be looking to perhaps re-enter if we break out of this again. But what's interesting is that H bar isn't really the only asset showing this sort of formation here. Another one that's showing us very similar wedge formation after a nice strong run up is Atom as well. And these two assets have actually kind of a lot in common, not just in terms of what they do fundamentally, but in terms of what has led to uh, increases in speculation in both of these assets. Just by looking at these charts, you can see that really they kind of kicked off their speculation at around the same point in time. A lot of it has to do with ETH gas fees getting tremendously high, network congestion hitting an all-time high in ETH as that NFT craze really kicked off in August and September. And people looked to other chains with faster throughputs to begin speculating, to begin creating NFTs, that sort of thing. And two large benefactors beyond what CJ was just talking about, Sol, were HBAR and Atom. And now that we're seeing, ETH, like I mentioned earlier, teetering on a previous all-time high, teetering on that breakout level, I think that assets that performed very well when ETH was making a run are worth a look here, especially when you consider these technical formations that they're showing with these sort of wedge patterns here. So those are my two sort of doges of the week, I guess I'll say. But I will be watching them closely as ETH approaches its previous all-time high here.
Thank you for that, Monty. I have two today that I want to share.
Let's hear them.
First is kind of a follow up from, I believe it was either Thursday or Friday of last week, but we talked about Phantom. This is a really nice protocol in terms of its price action and how it's been trending. Um, Also, a lot of interesting developments that have occurred, but overall, there's not a whole lot of currencies that have trended this strongly, and still seeing strength and convergence within the RSI after breaking out of that ascending triangle. And if you do extrapolate this measured move, it goes to about $3.14 as the overall target for FTM. But that's been one that has just really showed strength and is still above that outer Bollinger Band. If I had it highlighted here, I'll switch to the light mode. And yeah, you can still see that above the outer band, trending strong, almost completing that overall target price, like I said, at about 318, 314. The second one I want to highlight, though, is Link, because this technical formation, Link is finally coming around. Like, it was one of the oracles that just has not really performed. And now it's actually showing a very interesting formation. And it kind of reminds me of Ethereum and how Ethereum looked before it made its run to new all-time highs, or at least very close to new all-time highs. But you have the tentative head and shoulders pattern here. You have that supply absorption with the capitulation and volume in late September. Then you have the breakout of the right shoulder, and it's not perfect. I know what you're thinking. It's not a perfect inverse head and shoulders pattern. However, the general premise of the trend is still intact, and we are very close to that breakout level after seeing quite a run last week and a very nice spike in bullish volume above that moving average. And overall, when you step back and look at this much broader pattern, it does consist of that cup and handle pattern that we've been discussing. You have the downward handle right there, and we broke out of it in early October and have consolidated ever since. But now, within the last 6 to 7 days, we're actually finally starting to see that bullish continuation from the overall macro cup and handle pattern. And then, that handle is actually turning into a bullish inverse head and shoulders pattern, which is pretty interesting. But nonetheless, those are going to be my two dojis of the day for today. And yeah, I'll leave it with that, Monty.
Very nice, CJ. So, across the board, there's some pretty interesting formations occurring, whether they're cup and handles or wedges. Plenty of altcoins to take a look at. And, as always, CJ and I will be hanging out in the crypto room. So if you guys would like to stop by and discuss any altcoins that we talked about today, or any ones that we didn't mention today and you'd like to hear about, head over to marketrebellion.com/try crypto, where you can try your first week for just $7. And like I said, we have a global community of traders that are in there 24/7, sharing their insights, pro charting service, cutting edge sentiment data, full education curriculum, and a whole lot more. So head over there and check that out. We would love to hang out with you. And if you're looking for a place to trade your crypto, we recommend you head over to investvoyager.com, where you can trade 60 plus assets. You can earn up to 12% interest on assets like DOT and 10% on USDC. So head over there and check them out at investvoyager.com. And if you do, use code REBEL25 for $25 free in crypto when you sign up. But that's all we got for today. A very exciting start to the week, shaping up to be a very positive week for crypto. Like I said, CJ and I will be here to discuss everything along the way. So hopefully we'll see you guys in the crypto room this week. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you again tomorrow. Take care.